Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. We are in a series on how to start a movement. And I invited Frank Fiume to be on the show with us because he started a movement, a very large movement using franchising. So for those of you that are listening that are aspiring to start a movement and or grow your movement, you might want to consider franchising as an option. We'll talk about that today, what that looks like, why Frank chose franchising to further his mission and how that's worked out. So I'm excited to have him here. Frank is a pioneer in the youth sports industry, and he is the founder of I9 Sports. In the U.S., it is the nation's leading franchise of youth leagues and camps. Since 2003, I9 has generated more than 300 million in sales with 2 million participants in 900 communities across 30 states nationwide. And so he's had a lot of experience with managing large volumes of people and different dynamics and so forth. So I think there's going to be a lot of great insights for you here. He actually sold I9 Sports in 2017 to a private equity firm, but he still remains a minority shareholder and a member of the board of directors. So now we can also look what's next as he's now transitioned, as he describes. It's still his baby, but his baby has grown up and gotten married. So, so Frank, welcome, Leaders of Transformation. We're excited that you're here today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure.
I'm
All
excited.
right, so let's talk about youth sports. I think that's a good place to start. I read your book, of course, running, this one here, running, for those of you who are watching, running with my head down. Fantastic. And I highly, just a little plug actually for it, I highly encourage our listeners and viewers to go get a copy of that book. We'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to Frank's website. And of course, you can find it on Amazon. Fantastic read. But in there, you talk about why you got into the youth sports. And I think that's a great place for us to start here today.
Well, it started out as a kid. So I was this kid that was crazy passionate about baseball. I didn't just play in little leagues and watch games on TV and just listen to it on the radio. I was creating leagues in my backyard, tearing up the backyard. This is as a 10-year-old. Took board games and turned them into leagues. So I was like breathing, eating, drinking, sleeping baseball, right? But I kind of put that aside. Of course, like we all have these passions and hobbies as a kid. When I got to college, I was always concerned with like, what is my purpose in life? And like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? What's my destiny? All these things that you have these crazy concerns, right? When we're in college. And I was always thinking, Nicole, like the people that knew what they wanted to do in their life, I always thought, wow, they're so much further ahead of me. If they knew what they wanted to major in, they knew what they were going to do after college. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I would always tell my dad, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, what am I going to do for a living? And he'd always say, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. Eventually I did figure it out. But what I learned along the way was after I got out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up going into medical sales. I called on open heart surgeons in New York City. It's a great career for people that aspire to being in sales and working in the medical field and being around that. But I had no passion for it. So to make a long story short, I coached and played on a recreational softball team with my college buddies on the weekend. And I thought, if I maybe start a softball league for guys, like a recreational, like a bar league on the weekends, it was nothing more than I had super amount of passion for baseball. And I thought if I start this softball league, maybe if I treat it like a real business, I'd be onto something. Well, lo and behold, I chipped away. We got 35 teams or 53 teams our first year, and within 6 years, we're the largest softball league in the state of New York. We had almost 1,000 teams. My wife and I got married in 1996. We moved to the Tampa Bay area, and it kind of fell into my lap. I did a lot of research on the youth sports model, which I knew nothing about. I didn't have any kids, but I learned that the NFL was going to start offering youth sports flag football leagues for kids as a way as an outreach program to promote the game of football. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I can take my experience, I know how to run softball leagues. If I could take that same systems and processes, that structure I have, and apply it to kids leagues, we would be onto something. So started running a kids flag football league here in the Tampa Bay area. 100 kids turned into 600 kids. And after that, my wife and I were thinking, okay, well, we have leagues in New York for adult men. We have kids leagues in Florida. we have a tremendous amount of opportunity here, and I was scared to death though. Like, how do I expand this? And the more research I did, the more I started getting more and more attractive to this whole franchise model. To me, it was intriguing, and that's how I led to that.
Got it. Now, you mentioned in your book there's a story of when you were young that kind of like fueled this passion for you, even when it came to sports and having fun and encouraging kids to have fun in sports. Can you share that story about your neighbor?
Yeah, sure. So, like so many of us, you play ball in the backyard with your friends. My parents never put any pressure on me. I always played for fun. I had this one neighbor this close friend of mine, we were 10 years old, we were playing Little League, and his team made it to the Little League championship game. And I went just as a spectator because my team didn't make it. So his dad had driven us to the game. His dad was the coach. And lo and behold, my buddy came into pitch in the ninth inning for this championship game. And he loaded the bases. Bases were loaded, and he walked in the winning run of the championship. And as soon as he lost the game, he went running off the field, hysterical crying. I mean, he got into the family car, locked himself in, and I knew it was trouble because his dad was one of those yelling, screaming, absolutely raving lunatic kind of dads about sports. And remember, these people drove me to the game. So I got to go home with them, right? Sure enough, kid unlocks the door after a big, to do. The dad is screaming at him in the whole car ride home about how poorly he pitched. I mean, it was so ridiculous. And the worst part about it, Nicole, was after we got home, I went to my house. Our backyards were kind of adjacent to one another. I could hear him pitching to his dad. It went on to feel like for hours. You just kept hearing the ball pounding the baseball mitt. And his dad made him keep pitching again and again and again out of punishment for losing the game. That memory will never forget that because I wasn't raised like that. Youth sports was something about fun. It was about having a great time, learning. Don't get me wrong, I am super competitive, but I believe in healthy competition, right? But his dad was this yelling, screaming, and nut. And it did resonate with me to the point that as I got older and kind of followed this path of running sports, I knew right away that if I did this, it was going to be like all about fun, safety, convenience. I wanted it to bring families together. I wanted about creating memories because I had great memories of playing as a kid. So that absolutely was that was emblazed in my in every fiber of my being when it came to starting the sports league for sure.
Yeah, I just interviewed Matt Young, and he just sold Innovative Fitness and is now consulting in the sports arena, and
Hmm.
he's very involved in youth development sports. And we talk about that importance of bringing in the fun and and what does that look like and so forth. And you describe it's a perfect example of what not to do, how to not make it fun for your kids, making it punishment ultimately. And so that's, yeah. And and every movement has a catalyst, has a why behind it, something that drives you. It has to
Hmm.
have that, otherwise it won't last, right?
Oh,
And
totally. You have to have a strong enough why, especially get you through those tough days, the dark days of leading your movement. Like you really got to know why you're doing this and believe in it wholeheartedly.
yeah, so what are some of the dark days for you? What were some of those days? What happened to lead to those, and then how did you kind of navigate out of those days, or
Mm.
stay in them for
Well,
as long
yeah.
as you needed to?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Nicole, probably like number one thing was hunger. I don't know anybody who has achieved a level of success without being enormously hungry, knowing their why, and hungry to the point where, failing is not an option. Like they don't care how long it's going to take, I'm going to make it work. I've had the fortune of, since I've been in franchising, I've been around hundreds of entrepreneurs. And so it's not just my experience, but I've seen that the difference between the people who are successful and the people that fail, that common thread the common thread among the most successful people is hunger. You got to want it. So the dark days for me, look, they started out when I wanted to start running even my adult men's softball league. It was everybody that doubted me. They said I would never get fields. I would, all the fields are taken up. You'll never get customers. You'll never get umpires. I chipped away. Nothing was given to me. I didn't come from having money, didn't come from contacts, didn't have the know-how, but I was going to figure it out. And fortunately, through my research, I found a few mentors, a few older guys that had been involved in sports that said, come on over. Let me tell you what I know. And in some cases, it was nothing. It was more. It was just about motivation. It wasn't some real big aha moment and gold nuggets, but it gave me hope. So I would say that's another thing, that if you're going to lead a movement, having hunger, having hope, knowing your why. My dark moments went from grinding out the business to me having my own dark days of questioning myself, like, can I make this work? At one point it was couldn't make it a living full time. I almost sold the business. I almost gave up on it at one point when I was in medical sales, which I had no passion for, and this movement, which at first was ABA Sports, as Adult Men's Softball League. And I made that phone call to a broker, and I couldn't even believe I was making that call, but I was literally giving up. And I said, I'm interested in selling my business. And the broker said to me, like, what are you selling? Like, what is this thing? It's a league. You don't even own the field. You rent them from parks and schools. What do you have, a mailing list? And he said, maybe you'll get $100,000 at best. And half of me was so upset by all the work I put in and how he devalued it. And the other half of me was feeling so guilty that I made that call, like I was giving up on my dream. So there have been many dark days, for sure, and those were the early dark days.
So how did you get through that? You mentioned about hunger, hope.
Yeah.
So obviously you didn't sell it at that
Right.
point,
Right.
and you had to make a decision inside you to continue on. And I remember you sharing in your book how, yeah, you were living in Tampa and you were running this back in New York, and
Mm-hmm.
talk about what that was like, and full-time working, doing newsletters at night and all of that. I mean, when you say you really got to want it, sometimes people hear success stories and they're like, well, easy for you to say, but you don't have some of the challenges that I face. And I think it's important that we share those challenges. You do so beautifully in your book.
Well,
Is to
thanks.
share those honestly so that people can realize that, it didn't come easy to you either, but it was worth it. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to the end goal,
Mm-hmm.
through that. So talk a little bit about, how did you do that?
Yeah. What challenges didn't I have? I mean, I was working a job that was barely making ends meet, that I had no passion for. My wife and I had just had our first baby. We had our daughter. I had this new home that we had moved into. I felt an enormous amount of pressure because I was running this league, as you mentioned. I was running it from the Tampa Bay area. The leagues were running in Long Island. If the competitors found out that I was running this league from 1,500 miles away, they would have been all over getting those fields from me, getting them and saying, well, this guy can't possibly run this league remotely. They would have made anything up. It was really, really cutthroat business. So here I am with this 800 toll-free number where customers could call. I would fly up to New York when I could. I was in an enormous amount of stress. I had this epiphany, um, that I had this epiphany after my daughter was born, that the last thing I would want would be for my daughter to grow up and for me to say to her, honey, I would have, could have, should have. I should have done these things. Don't do like I do like I say. That to me was so powerful. Like, if anybody that's watching this or listening to this and feels like there's something greater, if you want a strong enough why, how about if you have a child, or if you're going to have kids one day, or you have somebody you're going to inspire, or a family member or a friend, because you'll always do more for other people than you will for yourself, always. And there's no way I wanted to let my daughter down, even though she was an infant. I just kind of visualized what it would be like 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future. And I didn't want to have this would have, could have, should have. My wife and I have been married for almost 25 years now. And I can tell you that one of our secrets to success in our marriage, and we've had plenty of ups and downs, don't get me wrong, like any couple, but our mantra we've always lived by is live your life with no regrets. That means we do what we think is right, even if it's scary. Then we'll do it scary. And when you have that that mantra where you're going to live your life with no regrets, it shuts off all possibilities of excuses, and you just go for it. And I encourage people to really live their life, their dreams, and why they were put here. I don't think it was for the safe bet. I don't think I was put on this earth to work in pharmaceutical sales and be miserable. That's not why I was put here. I was put here to actually be part of a movement, to actually change an industry, to inspire people and change lives. And I've been very fortunate to be able to do that. But that would not have happened if I didn't have that strong enough why and to feel that my daughter was so important to me.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. And now I know at one point you had to make a decision between adult sports and youth sports,
Mm-hmm.
and you made the choice for youth sports. And so to talk about that idea of franchising, because we're exploring this, as a possible avenue for people who want to start a movement to actually get into franchising. Now, there's certain things that need to be in place. Maybe you can talk about that. There's certain things that
Mm-hmm.
need to be in place in
Yeah.
order to franchise. Lots of people that over the years as a business coach are people saying, yeah, I'm going to franchise. Well, build a system first and then franchise it. Just saying, it works better that
Right.
way. But talk about that, and choosing your niche, the importance
Mm-hmm.
of choosing your niche, and like really going after the thing that's most important, as opposed to going wide and trying to cater to everybody.
Yeah, going wide does not get the results. It sounds safe because you think if I cast this wide enough net, I'm going to get enough people, I'm going to be successful. It actually works exact opposite. When you cast such a wide net that you try to be everything to everybody is when you fail. Let me step back for a second there, Nicole, and share with the audience, if you're thinking of franchising as a vehicle for your movement, it can be a very positive strategy. I'm not saying it has to be for everybody, and franchising isn't for everybody. But the reason why I chose to franchise my model is, again, I had my business in New York and in Florida. I wasn't at the point yet where I felt comfortable with hiring people all over the country. And I wanted to expand rapidly. I didn't have a whole lot of capital at the time. So using other people's capital, using other people's investment as a way of expanding my business is a great vehicle to use. Plus, it gets to expand faster. I know rapid expansion is, of course, probably intriguing everybody. Everyone wants to grow faster. Of course, growing faster also has its own challenges, which I'll get to. But the beauty of franchising as a model is getting faster, using their capital. I don't need as many people in-house. I'm not dealing with the local franchise problems or challenges that happen because they hire their own people. However, with franchising, it's not, you don't get everything. Now you have to give some up. The number one thing you're going to give up by franchising your model is making sure that that movement that your vision for your movement stays consistent, and that it can be translated easily across wherever you're looking to, state-wise, regionally, nationally, internationally. Look, the more people that you have that are going to be part of your franchise system, they're not all going to believe in your vision. So you're going to have to deal with the challenge of constantly getting buy-in to believing in your vision, following your rules, your systems and processes. So quality control is something that is going to be a challenge to deal with. There's no question about it. I don't know what franchisor hasn't had to do that, right? Even McDonald's and Subway, right? The other thing is you're going to be giving up some of the revenue. So we collect the 7.5% royalty is what we do for our industry. I'm not saying it's right for every industry, but in the child-related sports, child-related industry, about 7.5% royalty. So we're not getting 100% of the revenue, right? I'm only getting this portion of it. But there are benefits to that as well. So I'm obviously not also inheriting any of the expenses that the franchisees have at their local level. The other thing so it brought me to franchising is that I knew that I just couldn't go get a lawyer to franchise my model. I wanted to make sure I had a franchise consultant. So you want to get yourself a franchise consultant that's all they do is franchise, because building the structure and knowing what your franchise is going to entail is something that you don't even know what you don't know. But a franchise consultant can help you do that. Having a franchise attorney is the second piece of the puzzle. If you have a friend that's a lawyer, or have an attorney already that says, I can do franchising, no. You don't want somebody who can do franchising. You want a franchise attorney. There are way too many laws that are individual state specific laws about franchising, and the franchise laws have changed so much in regulations um, with the Federal Trade Commission that while I respect and honor that an attorney says I can do franchising, you can get yourself in a whole lot of trouble with having somebody who doesn't know the rules of the game. Go to the IFA, the International Franchise Association, has a website, and you can find franchise attorneys there, and they will build for you a franchise disclosure document. And so that's the contract you would give out. There's roughly 4,500 franchisors in the United States today. There's a lot more franchises in the United States by people who are accidentally franchising that are one mistake away from getting sued massively. So don't franchise by mistake, by not getting crossing your T's and dotting your I's. So after I franchised, I had my disclosure document, I had my consultant have the structure in place. Then I knew we were ready to quote unquote start offering franchises. And that's a different model because whatever your movement is, you're probably really good at your movement. You know your why, you know how to run the office, you know how to manage your people, you know how to do the marketing. But franchising means it's a whole new game. Now it's you're teaching people how to run your version of your office in a remote place. So just like me running a sports league for kids and franchising sports and supporting franchise owners, investors that they're relying on me to train them, support them, give them everything they need to be successful. That couldn't be any more different. It was two totally different businesses. But that's what it takes the franchise is to accept that responsibility as a franchisor. And it's not easy, but it was a great way for me to expand my model.
And how did you find your franchisees? What was some of the marketing strategies or I mean, it all kind of falls under marketing, but the
Mhm.
recruiting and marketing strategies, word of mouth, or did you use other techniques?
Yeah, recruiting franchisees, of course, early on is going to be all internet based. Since I started in the early 2000s, and that was a big thing was this franchise portals. The franchise portals, there's all different franchise websites where you'll see like a whole menu of catalog of different franchises, best opportunities, best franchises. You Google any of that, you'll see a whole bunch of them are out there. So these franchise portals are one thing, but today now, um, Facebook ads, Instagram ads. Um, there's franchise brokers. There's so many different ways of recruiting franchises. Of course, when we first franchise our concept, you don't even know what you're looking for. At least I fell into the trap of if they were charismatic, if I liked them, if they seemed organized, seemed detail oriented, if they had the money and their credit score was good, Nicole, I let them in. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I don't know what I'm looking for. If they like sports and they were nice, sure. I quickly found out that just because they liked football or even played college football didn't mean you should own a football business because whatever your movement is, no matter how strong you feel about your movement, it comes down to management, marketing, operations, finance, right? Accounting. These are the principles that your movement is really behind the scenes all about. For me, while youth sports was my movement, it was the vehicle that I was using because it's still your movement is a business. So what you're really looking for are people that believe in your movement and can apply business acumen to it. It doesn't matter. You want them to like your movement and believe in wholeheartedly so they can get through those tough days, but they have to embrace, for me, they were embracing scale by hiring people. They weren't going to do everything. They were going to embrace marketing, doing whatever it takes to run the business. Gaining financial acumen to all those things that you'd run any business. That's what's going to be needed to successfully run your affiliate movement
Yeah.
franchise.
Yeah, you bring up a really great point that it is a business and not to forget, because how many times do we hear people say, it's all about purpose and we focus on the purpose and it's not about money. But obviously, if you don't make any money, you
Mm-hmm.
don't get to do it very long, even if that means funding or getting donors to fund it. That's obviously really important. One of the things that, as I was listening to you, that struck me is it's very easy to get into the day-to-day operations
Mhm.
of your business, running the business, that you forget why you're in business in the first place. So, what are some of the practical things that you did, even on a day to day basis, to stay focused on the mission and to keep your people, franchisees, and also but the people that were working for you, because you did have a team at corporate,
Mhm.
um, to stay on focus to the mission and remember why you were doing it?
Oh, yeah. So the number one thing that we did is making sure that our employees were actually at the locations. So for us, since our business is sports leagues for kids, right? Flag football, soccer, basketball, t-ball, lacrosse, to making sure that our staff was actually at the fields on Saturdays. They wouldn't have to be there every Saturday, but I wanted them to remember why we do what we do. Fortunately, between going to the games and seeing, kids scoring their first touchdown in their life and the parents cheering, I mean, you get the warm and fuzzy feeling. But the other thing is through social media now, which we didn't have early on in our business, seeing the social media posts by parents and being able to communicate our message and having that interaction with the customer through social media also kept remembering us why we do what we do. It's kind of getting out of the four walls, getting out of the ivory tower. And I'll tell you, for us, I've had countless number of stories from parents that were contributing to like a social on our social media of stories that makes you remember why we do what we do. One in particular that stands out to me was there was this mom who the night before her child's game, first game, he was a 5-year-old boy, she wrote the night before his game, he told her that he was going to score his first touchdown and he was going to win the medal. So she writes on Facebook, game day, he scored his first touchdown and won the medal. And she wrote something along the lines of, the look on his face as he ran down the field while we applauded and cheered is a memory I will never forget. And
Mm,
I'm like,
yeah.
are you serious? Like, I started this movement because I liked sports. I didn't even realize I was going to create something that someone would actually say it's a memory they will never forget. Are you kidding me? That to me
Yeah.
tells you that you don't even realize sometimes the amount of people you could impact. And that is just one of many, many stories that has touched me. And we make sure our franchisees know about it, of course. They experience this every Saturday and Sunday they experience that. So I would say that the importance for anybody watching or listening is whatever your movement is, making sure your staff is actually part of it. I want them to be part of that movement, getting out of the office. I don't care what they do. They could be in accounting. Get out from behind the desk and get out there and be part of it because you want them to have that, remember, know that why you do what you do.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yes. And something else that came up while you were just sharing is something that you're doing on social media, having people share the stories. So you've got to create, so what I heard in that was you had to create a hub, you had to create a page, a community. So how do you use social media in that, sense? And specifically, like, what are you doing on social media that is engaging and getting parents to feel comfortable and motivated to share those stories rather than them just keeping those stories for themselves and their own friends?
It starts at our local franchisee level. Our local franchisees, of course, talk to the customers. That's key at the field because you want to have them feel like part of this community. So they do share the stories with the local franchisee at the field. But you find that it's just contagious. Moms and dads want to take pictures of their kids playing in I-9 sports. What we've done is we have like one main brand web page or not page, but social media page. Like on Facebook, we have the I guess it's called the organization page or the parental page, and then each one of our franchisees have their own local, but everything is still being driven to our main page. So anybody's interested in franchising, I would suggest they go with that model so that you can kind of capture everything. Otherwise, if you have every franchisee or every affiliate location has just their own page, it's going to be so fragmented. You're not going to be able to capture that brand and that feeling. And it just takes a few people. Once a few people start posting the feel good stories and we take pictures as well and post them, it becomes contagious. People want to share these great stories about how they experience it, how we've changed their lives. A child that's on the spectrum of autism, and the mom and dad felt uncomfortable about putting him or her in any league, and they tried Iron Sports, and the welcoming that they got from the other kids and the coach, it's incredibly warming to your heart to feel that we can be totally inclusive and building kids' confidence, because that's really what you're in the business of. We played sports to have fun, but this is about self-esteem, giving kids confidence. Our motto is helping kids succeed in life through sports, and we teach the life skills that we think kids can take throughout their life. I know that's where I gained so many of my life skills, was the experience I had playing team sports as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I used to own a franchise. And as a coach, I've worked with a lot of franchisors and franchisees. And yeah, there's such a fragmented approach to social media that they don't get the opportunity to really see the snowball effect of all those stories being shared. So that's great. That's why I wanted you to share that. That's great.
Mhm.
Now, you've now sold it. Now, you actually went through two stages. I know you're a big Tony Robbins fan, and you just got back from UPW and had such a great time there. Saw that, speaking of social media, all over social media. And you had this idea from something that you got from Tony
Mhm.
to involve the employees, right? So that it would be employee owned. And so that
Mhm.
was your first phase. And then you ultimately sold it to a private equity firm. Talk about that process and why you chose that process. So for those, because you're talking about it being a business, there's also looking at the exit strategy and saying, okay, so I'm starting this, and what is my exit strategy ultimately? What am I looking to build?
Mhm.
And what am I going to do at the other end?
Sure. Well, I think any of us that start our movement, we generally don't start it with an exit in mind. You're starting your movement because you absolutely love with every part of your being, right? In your
Yeah.
soul, you feel something. You're not thinking about how am I ever going to leave this thing, right? You think it's going to go on forever. Well, I had that same feeling about I9 Sports. Today I still love the company. But here's what happened to me in 2015. I had realized I had been struggling for a couple of years prior to that, where the company didn't need me the way it used to. So, you know how when you build your organization, you aspire to having a great management team or team around you. Well, fortunately, I did that. What nobody told me, though, is when that happens, I found myself not needed anymore. There was no job for me. Yes, I was founder and I was CEO, but I had such a strong management team around me that I'd go into the office, and honestly, there was not really something for me to do other than get into trouble and mess with people, right? So I went to a Tony Robbins Business Mastery because I was trying to get like my mojo back. Like I was starting to feel really guilty because I thought I9 Sports was my purpose in life. And those of you that are watching this or listening, thinking this movement is my purpose. I hear what you're saying. I get it. But I got to the point where it wasn't as fulfilling as it once was. And I thought, how could I possibly give up on my purpose in life? So I go to this Tony program, and Tony says these words at the event. He says, success without fulfillment is ultimate failure. And I freaked out when I heard that, because he's telling me that because I know I'm not fulfilled anymore. That's failure. And then he said, look, if you don't have the passion for what you do anymore, get out. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to your company. Well, that hit me right between the eyes, Nicole, because if there's one thing I would never want to do, would be to hurt that company. And that's exactly what I was doing by staying with the company. It was at that moment that I realized I needed to really, truly release myself of the guilt that I was going to step away from the majority interest of I9 Sports. My wife and I were thinking, we were getting close to 50 years old. Kids were getting older. We had to start taking some chips off the table. Maybe this is scary because we built this enormous organization that's grew beyond our wildest dreams. But what if, like, all of our financial eggs were all in this basket? So at this event, I learned about an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. And it's an opportunity where you get to sell your company to the employees. They don't have to have any money for the investment. The company, your corporation actually goes out and gets a loan from a bank and then loans the money from the company to you personally, to actually pays you for your stock, and you get a valuation, and there's a trustee involved. So there's a big process to go through an ESOP. But the beauty of an ESOP is, number one, your employees share in all of the share in the profits. You still share in the profits. You still run the company, even though you're selling it. You still control it. But when you sell the company, the shares are shares that go to the employees, and they get to get the benefit of going into their retirement account. They get a sense of ownership. When you sell the ESOP eventually, at that point, then they get to cash in if they'd like to. We get to cash in, and also all the monies that the owner gets is all tax deferred. So look, you get tax deferred dollars, and on top of that, I'm not giving away any information to a competitor, because a lot of times you're bought out by a competitor and the deal falls through, and now they have information. I didn't have to do any of that. And Tony actually did this with his company. He had done it like just a few months earlier when I learned about this. So I said, I'm doing an ESOP. So I did the ESOP. I thought it was a great opportunity. The employees totally were grateful for it, although they really didn't understand like how this whole thing works. What do you mean it goes into my retirement? I'm not really seeing this cash. And then I got to the point, Nicole, about 2 years in, where I realized I'm tied even more to the company than ever before with the ESOP. The company still had grown dramatically, and I got a great offer from a private equity to actually close out the ESOP. They more than doubled our stock price. And that means our employees not only were going to get double the amount of shares and double the price, but on top of that, that was real dollars that was going to their account that they could have as cash and pay the taxes, or it can go into the retirement account. I mean, to have people to change lives, my employees' lives overnight, some of them overnight with the amount of money that went to their account, it was far better than paying Uncle Sam all those tax dollars and them not to be rewarded for all the hard work and helping me get to the top. So I did sell that in 2017 to private equity and kept on as a minority shareholder. But look, they got a chance to walk away with millions of dollars as a team.
That's fantastic. Yeah, win-win for everybody. So,
Absolutely.
what is next for you?
So I didn't see this coming, but what was next for me is, after I sold the company, I kind of felt like I want to demystify success, right? And I feel like my business has gone through so many highs and lows. People only see the highs, they hear, or they know I-9 Sports is this big success. But I wanted them to know that I've gone through so many highs and lows that I want to capture it in a book. So I wrote my first book. It's called Running with My Head Down, an entrepreneur's story of passion, perseverance, and purpose. And I wrote it because I wanted to show people that you don't have to have money, have contacts, or know-how. I wanted to show them how to grow a company and how to find their purpose. And their purpose is not maybe what they think. Like, I thought my purpose was my movement, my business. So through this book is how I share that. I'm also doing some speaking, and I just signed on starting January 1st. I'm going to be a host of a new show called From Burnout to Breakthrough, and it's on a new network called Awake TV. It's going to be on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, and as well as a website on this brand new network called Awake TV. And I want to help people from that burnout, what I went through, and help them break through. So I never saw any of this coming, but I can see it's just my next mission in life now.
So, what is your purpose now?
I think my purpose was always to be fulfilled. I always say my purpose is to be fulfilled, right? And to me, it's to use my creativity, my enthusiasm to inspire others. I
Yeah.
was mistaken in that I thought my mission, my purpose in life was ABA softball league for men. Then I thought it was I-9 Sports. And then it was, okay, it's this book. And I realized now it was none of those things. It was all of them. That our life is made up of a series of missions. So if you have a movement that you're super passionate about, that is awesome. You should absolutely go for it. But I also want to encourage you to know that there's a place in your heart. There's a time for also, and that it might just possibly be just one of a series of missions. You might actually have a bigger mission after this movement that you're getting ready to start, or
Mm.
that you're involved in right now. And that's what I'm finding. I can impact so many more people now, not just people from I-9 Sports and the kids and the franchisees, but look, now I get to help inspire entrepreneurs of any background, how to franchise, how to get past burnout, how to grow their business, how to exit their business. All of those things is my next mission.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Frank. I love that because there, I hear this often as a coach working with entrepreneurs who feel that just because they built something that they have to stay with it. And what, like you mentioned about, I don't feel fulfilled in this, but I feel guilty, of even wanting to do something else.
Mhm.
And so to be able to give them the freedom to say, and to step back and realize that your purpose is much bigger than any one thing. Those are just the vehicles in which you are living it out in the moment, is fantastic. So thank you so much. This has been rich. This has been so rich with insights and from your experience, but also tips, practical things that people can do if they're interested in going down this path with franchising. But even beyond that, being inspired to start a movement and what it takes to do it from your experience. Thank you
Mhm.
so very much. I would encourage our listeners and our viewers to go to frankfiume.com. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. That is Fiume, and is how you spell Fiume. And also we'll make sure that links to I9 Sports. So i9sports.com, that's with the number 9, i9sports.com is the website if you want to find out about that organization. And if you want to buy a franchise, you can check that out too. There's options there. But yeah, to be able to really understand how to utilize this model. It's a brilliant model. It's not for everybody. Franchising, it's not for everybody, but it's also a good option for many if you've got a system, if you know what you're doing, you have a proven model that you then can replicate out. So I encourage you to do that. I believe that leaders of transformation take action. And so something today, if it's sparked an interest, if it sparked an idea, an aha for you and saying, oh, I need to deal with that, I need to do something about that, then I encourage you to go and do it today, not tomorrow, not next week, not after the holidays, or this is going to come out actually in the new year. So, not after whatever, but do it now, because that's how transformation happens, is when we take action on the things that we learn. And so, because podcasts are great, I mean, it's fantastic. My goodness, I love listening to podcasts, and there's no shortage of podcasts out there, but it's taking action on the information that we learn. That's where the magic really happens. So we encourage you to that. We look forward to hearing your comments. Please let us know how this has impacted you, how you're using it. If you have further questions, let us know. You can go to leadersoftransformation.com. You can find us through the contact page and reach out to me there. Or you can go on social media and you can find us there and comment and share what you're doing. Share what you're planning to do if you're still in the throes of planning it out and how you're going to do it. Because we've had over 300 guests on this show. We have a few people that know something about business and about building movements. And so, we've got this great resource base to be able to support you. So if there's something that you need, let me know. And I'm well connected and I can put you in touch with the right people. So I encourage you that. We look forward to hearing those stories and your success stories and the impact that you're making in the world. And we look forward to also seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.